Welcome back, everyone, to today's Explainer. We're diving headfirst into a truly chilling piece of regional folklore today, the legend of the Chalawa. But hey, we're not just here to sit around and tell spooky ghost stories. No, we're going to dissect the actual mechanics of a psychological haunting based on our source material. This whole narrative goes way beyond cheap jump scares or, physical monsters lurking in the dark. It taps into something much deeper, and honestly far more terrifying. We're talking about the absolute manipulation of human vulnerability. So let's break down exactly how this legend constructs its horror, shall we?
Let's start with a completely impossible question. What would you do if in the dead of night someone you love more than anything in the world cried out for help from a dark, haunted jungle? Your basic survival instincts are literally screaming at you to stay safe, right? To hide. But what happens when that danger uses the exact voice of your deepest loved one? This is the core psychological trap of our story today. It forces a victim into a horrific corner, making them choose between your own physical safety and their most profound emotional attachments. It's a conflict that just completely short-circuits human logic.
All right, moving into Section 1, the storm and shelter.
Our story kicks off with a merchant named Randir. He's traveling back to his village in an ox cart and gets caught in just a relentless, terrifying thunderstorm. The jungle around him is basically turned into a literal nightmare of chaotic mud, dark thunder, and terrified oxen. It's a place of absolute vulnerability. But miraculously, he stumbles upon an ancient stone Hanuman temple. The contrast here is incredibly jarring. Outside you have this violent, dark chaos, but inside it's clean, serene, warmly illuminated, and smells of sandalwood. It perfectly establishes the temple as an island of safety in a literal sea of danger.
Which brings us to Section 2, the Sadhu's warning.
Seeking refuge inside this sanctuary, Randir meets an old, very serious sadhu with a long white beard and a tilak. The sadhu offers him shelter and food, but it comes with one unbreakable rule for surviving the night. Not every voice is human. He explicitly warns Randir that no matter what, and I mean no matter what, he hears outside after midnight, he absolutely must not cross the temple boundary. Right away, this tells us that whatever malevolent force is out there in the storm, it's not some mindless beast. It's highly intelligent and it's listening.
Okay, Section 3, the midnight temptation.
As the night gets incredibly deep, the constant, heavy sound of the rain is suddenly pierced by something else. A quiet, familiar voice. Randir is paralyzed with horror because this isn't the voice of some stranger, it's his own father's voice. Pleading from out there in the freezing rain, the voice claims to be in immense danger, literally begging his brave son to come outside and help. The entity is perfectly mimicking the affection and desperation of his dad, completely leveraging Randir's deepest love right against his own survival instinct.
So we hit the ultimate climax of this temptation. Put yourself in Randir's shoes for a second. Cold, hard logic dictates that his father is perfectly safe in their village, miles and miles away. Logic says walking out into that freezing, haunted storm is just absolute suicide. But when you hear the person you love most in the world crying out in agony, logic just vanishes. Overcome by a profound sense of familial duty and terrified by the microscopic chance his dad really is out there suffering, Randir slowly stands up. Ignoring the sadhu's strict warning, he reaches for that heavy wooden temple door.
And that takes us to Section 4, the Battle of Mantras.
Literally fractions of a second before Randir steps out into the deadly storm, the sadhu violently yanks him back inside, completely shattering the illusion. So, let's break down how this Chalawa, this illusionary spirit, actually operates. It's basically a three-step process. Step 1, it reads the victim's mind to find their absolute core attachment. Step 2, it flawlessly takes on the exact voice of that deeply loved person. And Step 3, it pleads for help to lure the victim outside the protective boundary. It doesn't use physical force at all. It weaponizes human vulnerability to make victims literally walk out to their own doom.
Now that its cover is blown, the spirit drops the whole innocent disguise. It gets incredibly angry, threatening to just keep returning for the souls of any travelers who seek shelter there. But the sadhu isn't having it. He initiates this incredibly powerful spiritual standoff. Sitting in the lotus position, he starts chanting protective mantras. Om Hanumate Nama, Om Ram Dutaya Nama, Har Har Mahadev, to invoke Lord Hanuman's power and reinforce the boundary. The source material describes the temple filling with this mysterious, protective energy, acting as a direct counterforce to the evil outside. The words themselves become a literal shield.
Now for our final part, Section 5, the spirit's origin.
Morning finally, thankfully breaks.
The storm clears, but it leaves behind some incredibly chilling physical evidence. There are mysterious footprints entirely encircling the temple boundary, showing exactly where the spirit just endlessly paced, completely unable to enter. But what was this thing hunting Rondir? Well, the Sahu explains the tragic lore behind the entity. The Chalawa was actually once a human, a man who was driven completely mad by grief over his wife's death. He died in this very jungle on a similarly stormy night. Now his spirit is trapped by its own immense sorrow and loneliness, and it just endlessly seeks to drag others into that exact same pain, using their own attachments as the bait.
Randhir eventually makes the long journey back to his home village of Shampur, and there he gets the ultimate and honestly terrifying confirmation of the sadhu's warning. He walks into the courtyard, and there's his father, completely safe, totally untouched, just sitting there laughing. This singular moment confirms with absolute, chilling certainty that the desperate, suffering voice in the dark was just a malevolent, flawless mimic. The psychological trauma for Randhir isn't just about almost dying. It's the realization of how painfully close he came to death specifically because he loved his father so much.
It's a realization that forever changes Randhir and honestly, changes how we look at this story. The knowledge that the darkness can perfectly replicate the light of our own lives is profoundly disturbing. Think about it. When your own immense capacity to love can be weaponized against you, how safe are you, really? If the jungle knows your deepest attachments, who will it use to call you? Thanks for joining me on this explainer. Today, I really hope this breakdown gave you a fascinating new perspective on the dark psychology of folklore.
See you next time.